Good day and welcome again to the Strong Ambition Podcast. I'm your host, Rhyland, and we're going to dive into mindset today. Today's guest, Bob Doyle, was actually a contributor to the book and the movie, The Secret. Really cool book, and it was a very big deal when it came out. It was about the law of attraction. Now, I have conflicting views on the law of attraction, and we do talk about it a little bit. Fundamentally, it's about manifestation. It's about imagining a dream life, and it will help you get to that result. There's a story, I believe, in the book that is about Jim Carrey writing $1 million check to himself. And I believe it was 2 or 3 years later, he actually was able to cash that check. And so this power of manifestation makes people very determined. And I do believe that this helps. Like, I don't think there's any argument that if you dream a dream, you have a way better chance of getting it. And that's why I believe in probability. But he dives into more of, it's not just about that. And there's a lot of mistakes with people only believe in the secret is like a genie. And we dive into what the work really is and where people aren't going to be able to manifest the result. Now, I'm still kind of on the ropes as far as how much I believe in the law of attraction, but I do believe he has some great knowledge here for you. I think he has something really fundamentally helpful. And we talk about his program and how his program is there to help people. I'm going to be looking into it myself because why be limited? Why be limited by your subconscious mind? So I'll let Bob talk about the program, let him talk about where people hit their resistance points. And so without further ado, here is Bob. Good day, Bob. Great to have you on the show. I'm super honored to meet you. I actually remember seeing your book. My mom had bought it, so I'm really honored to have you on the show. Why don't we dive into this? Tell the viewers and listeners more about you and what your specialty really is.
Sure. Well, so most people do know me from my work with The Secret. And just to be clear, I was just a contributing author to that book and the movie. I was one of many folks who contributed to that. But before any of that was ever what I was doing in life, my goals were always to be a broadcaster. I knew growing up that I wanted to be on the radio. I wanted to do voice work, and I just wanted to do characters and be a goofball. That was very clear. I knew it from very early on. And so I spent 7 years in broadcasting. And because I had so many things I wanted to do creatively, but I was in this major market and I just didn't have the freedom to do it. So I got a little impatient. And so I jumped out of broadcasting, and then it was just jumping around from career to career. And the frustrations around that are what led me down to sort of learning more about just a bigger picture about what's the invisible reason this isn't working for me. None of these things are working. That led me into like more new age bookstores and having reading metaphysical books and learning about meditation and visualization. And that eventually all led me to the law of attraction. I finally got my ahas around it. I put together a program on it. And 3 years later, the producers of The Secret found that program and invited me to be a part of that film. Then, of course, it exploded, at least in the personal development community. And, my life changed personally, professionally, everything, because I was basically in the personal development industry for 3 years. And I didn't even consider myself being in it. I just had this program that was out there. Now I'm in this movie and book with Jack Canfield and Bob Proctor and Marcy Shine, all these people who've been around for a really long time. It's like, whoa, what is this? Who am I supposed to be? And that was kind of it's kind of a pivotal part of my story, is that after The Secret, I felt like I needed to be more like those other people, and that the public had an expectation of me. So that sort of goofball broadcaster side of me sort of got pushed back a little bit. But that eventually caught up with me, and I was very, felt a lot of frustration around that. And then when live streaming came along, I found the inner broadcaster came back out again. And so I was able to find a way to sort of be the goofball, be creative, and use broadcasting and those abilities to share my message, which is basically personal transformation. My work is about helping you to become the person you need to be to have the life you want. And so for 20 years, I spent 20 years teaching people the law of attraction, how that works to do that. But I had this revelation, and it shouldn't have taken me 20 years to realize that people are really slow to get results with this stuff. There's way too many questions. And so that's what eventually led me to pivoting my focus on rewiring our brains, doing the things that are necessary to make the structural changes in our brain so that we develop new autopilot behavior, which gets us the results we want in our lives rather than sitting around wishing for it. That's it in a nutshell, what my work is about.
Yeah, that's a real good summary. I think you did an excellent job of that story. If you don't mind, I want to just have a little quick touch on this because when I have a new guest, and people don't tend to really look at it too much, but I'm curious about really how you grew up and if that there's a curious mindset. Like, I find that someone's backstory does have some sort of a story there that we don't always pay attention to. So would you say, like, growing up, you said, yeah, like this goofball commentator idea, but there's also probably some form of curiosity within your upbringing, something about it that makes you always be searching for something else. Would you say anything like that?
I can tell you exactly what my theory is, because obviously I've looked at this many times over the course of the years. So my parents were divorced early on, and we all just sort of went to our separate corners. And as a young child, I think, there's these out of control things that are happening in your life. I'm 5 years old. There's nothing I can do about any of it, right? But you learn that, you kind of get wired with, I can't control this. I see my mother unhappy, all of this stuff. It's like this chaos stuff. And I think that early on, that implanted something in me that I just wanted to control my circumstances, right? I just wanted to have more control over my life. So it's not surprising I would get into things like the law of attraction and other similar things about creating our experience of reality and basically taking more control. So I think that's kind of what drives me on one level, because I think we all want to create a life we love. But then the other thing around the creativity in general, because in addition to broadcasting, I'm a musician, and there's just all sorts of ways I like to express myself creatively. And that is, at the core, that's what I'm really trying to help people do. Because when they express their creativity, whether that's, typical to what we think of like art and drama, or just business or family, just how they do their life, what's in them to create, that's when, they're going to contribute the most value, and they're going to have the most joy and the most happiness and fulfillment. It's when we don't express what is in us for whatever reasons we have concocted, why we can't do it, it's not safe to do it, we'll never succeed, any of these conversations. If we don't express ourselves creatively, that's when we really feel it. That's when depression sets in, and resentment, all sorts of anxiety, because it's like, I'm here to be this and I can't. You've got this idea that you can't. Somebody's told you that, and now you're wired to be a person for whom these things won't happen. My job is to help you recognize that autopilot wiring. That is not, there's no truth to it. It's just a series of things happened and you develop that wiring. Now we can get in and change that story, because that story is not true. So let's come up with another story that's way more empowering and tell that one over and over. And then we can get, different results in life.
I really love the term rewiring, and this, like you even talk about the creativity, and it's so important that people realize that humans are a creative species, right? And that's what made us move ahead. I remember hearing that the story of Greek mythology, they really actually usually describe that one of the gods gave us fire, but it was fire of the mind. It was that we had the ability to create things, and that's what gave us, society. And there's this great book, you may know it being the self-help realm, War of Art by Stephen Pressfield.
And great freaking book.
Amazing book. And what he really talks about is that it is the voice of resistance is really guiding you towards where you're going to find the inner artist, and that everyone has them. Like, we all have it. And it's when, like you say, when you don't give yourself that, that's when things set in. I think that's super powerful. When you were developing in this, because I'm really curious, like, that's such a great stance right off the bat. You had circumstances you couldn't control. Then you decided, what can I control? What were some pivotal lessons for you that got you into the law of attraction, all this stuff? What were some big key moments for you that you were like, really set you in on that trajectory?
Honestly, I think my whole journey down that metaphysical road, like what's going on out, because again, I grew up, so my mom was a teacher. And so we were very analytical, just logical, not high and low emotion. We were just, like this. And so this whole conversation about creating reality or energy or vibration, forget about it. It's never going to occur in the house. So, that just wasn't something I was exposed to until I was an adult. But there was just something about it, again, that appealed to me. There was something, like, as I was reading about the energetic nature of the universe, it all just made sense. Like, it clicked. It was more like I was remembering. And this is something I hear from a lot of people, like when they saw The Secret, it was more like, I always knew this, and this helped me to remember, my own personal power or whatever. So I was just always really fired up by the possibility. I mean, because look, I believe that, just like you said, we are here to create. That is our sole purpose. And we were born with this brain that allows us to create just ridiculously unimaginable things for most people. I mean, look around the world at the technology that exists. That all came from somebody's brain. And it all started with an idea that developed, and they didn't let, how is this going to happen, stop them. They didn't let failure stop them. They saw a vision, they made it non-negotiable, and they took the action ongoingly. And then, if you want to talk law of attraction, all of that action and the energy around it, it just sort of, then they attracted, if you will, all these circumstances for which them to respond to. The point is, though, forget all that woo-woo and the attraction. They are taking action as the person who has succeeded. And therefore, they're getting way different the results than a person who has got all sorts of ideas about why they can't, or this probably won't work, or I'll give it a week and we'll see, right? That mindset is sure to stop you.
Absolutely. The value you have there, I think, is really great, because when you'd reach out to come on the podcast and look at some of your stuff, and that was a big thing that I always kind of don't love about the whole premise of manifestation, is that we have to take responsibility for actions. And I totally believe that, the probability that things are going to work out is if you manifest them, if you have the ability to believe in yourself and all those things. And you address the problem I had with the book right off the bat, about, people don't do the work. So and I know you want to talk more about what you're working on more currently, but can we quickly talk about what is kind of the main premise of the law of attraction? And then why don't you address that inherent problem?
Well, okay. So the problem is, it was presented, let's say, for example, the Secret was the first time you ever heard of it. And there's a genie in there, and there's a lot about visualizing, and some magical things seem to occur, and it has a very sort of magical feel to it, right? And that is the basic problem, is that people look at the law of attraction as some sort of magic trick that they must master. And they have to get everything freaking right. And what happened was, after The Secret came out, now everybody and their grandmother and her neighbor who was in the personal development industry at all, or even thinking about it, came out with their own law of attraction course from what they gleaned from watching the movie, or maybe heard a thing or two here. So now they all have their own techniques and their own processes and their own secret behind the secret. That was making me crazy. Everybody come out, the real secret, behind the secret, to get the results you want. And it just layers of confusion. So obviously, people are trying to take in all of these different opinions. And who are they being as a result of this? Well, a confused person who's not sure what they're doing and doesn't know if it's going to work or not. Or they've got some false sort of, I absolutely have faith in it. That's what they're saying. But inside, they're like, but I got no evidence of it, because they're waiting for magic. That's the biggest problem, because what happens is people get sporadic results at best. I got the opposite of what I wanted. How come they got it? How come I didn't? Can I do this? All of that. The fact of the matter is, you're going to get results that are different than what you're getting now when your actions change, so that you give the universe something else to respond to, so you can get different results. And those actions needs to be sustained if you're going to sustain that life. The only way those actions are going to be sustained if they are your autopilot behavior. Just like your autopilot behavior right now is sustaining your current reality. It's all these subconscious conversations going on that you don't know anything about, that you haven't shown a spotlight on yet. So you just think what you're looking at is the truth. And so every time a situation comes up that you know how to make meaning of because of your past and your wiring, you make meaning out of it. And maybe it stops you, maybe it doesn't. But if it's stopping you over and over and over, and you know it's stopping you from moving forward, then it's time to wake up. And that is really the number one thing I'm helping people do, is to wake up to their autopilot behavior so that they can make different choices.
That's very powerful there. It's the autopilot, and to recognize when you're making these, just intuitive or just natural inclinations, like, no, but this is what I'm supposed to do, but it's not, and, proper language around this. Like, I remember hearing the first time I ever heard the word self-limiting belief is this, like, are you even aware that they're all around you every day? And it's actually making you just going with a personality you actually don't like. Now, there's a couple key words there I really want to kind of hear your view on. And first off, I think it was dangerous to call it The Secret. I think that was an inherent rule. You package anything as a secret, it's going to be exciting, right? So it's not really paying attention enough to what the solution is. And the other thing, I guess personally, and this is just my viewpoint, I don't love the term law of attraction. I prefer probability of attraction, because you're using that genie when you say secret, and then you use law. So it's like it's guaranteed to work. And so to me, it has more of an appeal if you say the probability is when you put everything in the right effort, that's your best chance. Is that kind of fair?
Sure, it's fair. But I also think that the way that the law of attraction is being described is not, it's like, the thing about saying that it's a law so it works every time makes people think that they're going to manifest what they want every time. That's not what it is. It's working. It's 100% dependent on what you're putting out there, but it's working. You don't turn it on, you don't turn it off, and you don't make it work. You feed it something and it comes back. That's it. So, and that's why I don't talk about this anymore, because who cares? It doesn't matter. There's so much arguing about this. And there's people who say, but there's really 9 universal laws. Oh, let's confuse people even more so they can get that. All people need to know is their brain can change. It changed all the way through their life to where they are right now. If they don't like where they are right now, we can change it again. But this time we're going to be intentional about it. And as a result of being intentional about it, discomfort's going to come up a lot faster, because you're not coasting and letting everything go. You are pushing yourself up against your current wiring, and growth is about to occur, and it's going to be uncomfortable. And that's why people quit, because they go, well, I'm supposed to be in the flow, or, well, it's uncomfortable and I've tried it and it doesn't work, so I guess the universe doesn't want it for me. Now, this is like, if today's inventors took that attitude, we'd be in caves. It takes you chipping away at something. People need to understand, like when they learned to walk, or if they learned to talk, they made mistake after mistake after mistake. It took months. They fell down. They didn't quit. They didn't say, because no one had planted the idea of quitting yet. It was like, I got to get there, so this is what you do. And if you can do that now with your goals, you'll make it. But if it's optional, or wouldn't it be nice, or, well, if the universe lays it all out for me, I'll do it, then you're not going to get it. And again, this is, and I know I'm like about this, and it may, and to some people, they take that to mean, well, are you anti-law of attraction now? No, but I'm just, and I know what it is, and I know how it works. But I've also realized that trying to explain it to people for 20 years, where they still have a zillion questions, that's 20 years they could have been working on themselves, thinking about who they really want to be and taking that action just to understand something that doesn't matter. It's like, if I drop a glass, I do not need to know how gravity works for it to hit the ground. It just does, because I did the thing I needed to do to make it drop. And if you want your life, you just do the things you need to do to make those things happen. And the visualization and all of these great law of attraction tools are pivotal. They absolutely help you. Visualization is the number one thing I have people do, because it allows you to rehearse your life and this new way of being without actually even being out there and doing it. And your subconscious doesn't know the difference. Therefore, you can spend time imagining yourself being who you want to be out in these situations, every possible scenario. It costs you nothing to do that. And the more you do it, and the more realistic it gets, and the more emotional you get, now you've rehearsed being that person. So the next time you're out there in life and you get thrown a curveball that normally makes you disempowered or has this other autopilot behavior, you know what to do. You know who to be in that moment, and you get to try it on. And the moment you start putting things out there in the physical, the universe, the world around you, the people have no choice but to change their response. You're giving them different input, and that's how your reality begins to change. And the more consistently you do it, the more it changes, and the more permanent the wiring gets in your head, so that it becomes more and more effortless to do.
So appreciate how you put that together. It's like saying, Do calories count? Yes. But that's not the whole conversation. Like, it's not even a question. Do the things that make the calories count properly. Like, it's not a question of if it works. It's like, but what's the work? And so I totally value where you're coming from. So let's dive into the subconscious work. Now, what kind of got you understanding the subconscious mind better? I mean, I've been very fascinated with NLP work, appreciating visualization. How did you get into appreciating what can be done to the subconscious mind?
Well, I think pretty early. I mean, once you start studying this, you learn pretty soon how much the subconscious is in charge. Now, what are you going to do about it? How deep are you going to go? How much time are you going to spend uncovering the things that aren't serving you? It's one thing to know that there's stuff in there, and it's another thing to be willing to go after it. And as I, moved through this work and met more people and learned new things, I had more and more processes and techniques to get deeper and deeper in there to hack away at that stuff.
Yeah, it's very clear to me now that there's, basically mechanics that, especially because the subconscious mind is so vast. You say it is handling a lot of things behind the scenes, and it's almost untangible to a lot of people to realize. I remember it was such a good piece of advice I'd had from my old boss. He had said, your subconscious mind is making a decision way before your conscious mind does. You might be deliberating with something. It could be on a menu. It could be like a big life decision, but you already have a decision made. You just haven't made peace with it yet, and you want to deliberate a little bit. So why don't we talk about, what are some tangible kind of concepts around understanding the subconscious mind that people should be aware of, even like maybe to start being aware of the subconscious mind, and some practical tools, you think?
Yeah. So again, I don't want to have people spend too much time analyzing themselves and feeling like they have to be, that type of a person. All people need to understand is when they feel disempowered. Like they just need to be alert to, I'm not feeling empowered right now. And that can show up in a lot of ways. I mean, it just means that they're not taking the action that makes them feel the best and moves them toward that. That's all they need to know, because what we're going to do is condition them to recognize it and have a replacement for that behavior. Because they can look at the subconscious, they can know about the subconscious and understand how it all operates and all that stuff, but that doesn't move them into action. It just gives them more knowledge. So for me, I'd much rather, and by the way, I've tested this, and people get way faster results with their life doing it this way, being way more direct, and then seeing how the law of attraction is at work without trying to make the law of attraction bring those results, when they can actually just go out there and make them for themselves. And then they see the law of attraction in action, and they get a better idea of like, oh, I see. We don't have to think about all this. We don't have to control all of this. We don't have to do the work of the bigger, the more intelligent, creative forces. We have our brain and the ability to take action and our vision and all of those things. We have what we need to go out in this universe, of which we are a part, by the way, not separate. We're an extension of it. And this is the most woo-woo thing I'll say, but it's through this physical extension of all this energy that is the universe, that the universe gets to experience itself. It wants you to have what you want. In fact, it's asking you to do it by implanting it in you. So we keep having this conversation, they learn about the law of attraction. I'm going to ask the universe for this. No, the universe is asking you. Here's a dream. Here's everything you need to fulfill it. Take this action, learn this stuff, and you will have this. But then we get conditioned, well, I don't want to learn this. I went to school. I've already learned what I'm going to learn. I can't learn a new thing. Well, if you tell yourself that, then you are correct. And you will not learn a new thing, and you will look at the rest of the world and go, well, I guess this is just what it is for me, because you keep telling yourself that. But at any age, you can take on learning a whole new thing. You can start from scratch and say, I have no knowledge about how to be the person I wish to be. But the people out there who are doing it, they got the knowledge somehow. What did they do? Oh, it took them 10 years. Okay, 10 years it is, because I am committed to this. But to sit there and go, I want to be that, I want to have that, so I'm going to visualize it and wait for it to manifest on my front door in a week. It makes no sense. And yet that's how some people approach it.
That's the inherent problem, right? Is that so many people are either confined to their limiting beliefs, thinking that they can't have anything, or they think it's just going to show up on their doorstep, and they don't realize that they have internal work in order to do it, right?
I actually don't think they think it will show up at their doorstep. They hope it will. They have this crazy faith about, well, if I post my memes every day, I'll show the universe my faith in this law of attraction thing. And I don't, and it'll just be delivered. I have faith. I know it's coming. I see it all the time. People with the best of intentions and all of this faith. And I'm like, okay, so what are you doing? What are you doing that's different today than what you did yesterday so that you can get a different result? Who are you looking at in this visioning of yours? Because if you're looking at you today in that future environment, you're going to have a problem. You got to look at the evolved you, the one who created this. What did they think? What meaning do they make? What stories have they given up? What excuses have they let go of to be able to accumulate that? If you're not willing to give up those stories about why you can't or why you haven't or whatever, then you're doomed, because it's going to guide your behavior. Because why would you take on a journey like I'm describing if you don't believe it can happen? You won't, or you'll quit at the first sign. Go, see, I told you. But if you just listen and wake up and realize your brain can change, it's going to be uncomfortable. It's going to take some time, but the benefit is huge. You get to live the life you want. And the journey itself will be fun. It'll have its ups and downs. And sometimes you'll feel defeated and like you took 4 steps back. But if you didn't have that, you wouldn't eventually get there. You have to have all of it, so that when you get there, you can tell your story. You have something to back up. You have wisdom, knowledge. You will maintain it. You will sustain it. But this idea that, you just spend a little bit of time on it. Well, I spent a month trying to rewire myself. It didn't work. There's biology involved. It takes literal time, and you have to be consistent. If you spend an hour visualizing a day on this thing, and then 23 hours a day, you go back to your own stories, own excuses, old reactions, and don't start taking new ones, you're not going to get any results either. And you can't turn around and blame the law of attraction or the program or the secret or the teacher or anything. You stopped doing the thing.
Fully agree. I have a mild understanding or just respecting this, really, to me, what is a very fascinating realm of trying to comprehend how to utilize the subconscious mind. I look at more of like trying to form habits with clients, which is inherently really a part of the same thing. But, I think using the subconscious mind for those habits is a super powerful tool I want to understand. But one of the things, for an analogy I always tell people, is that your mind runs like rivers, and rivers in the forest are going to continue to run that way and are supported to run that way through the energy of just your emotions. And if you aim to change the way that it flows, you got to dam up a river. And so, like you say, you got so much work ahead of you, but appreciate that it's just work. It's really putting in reps. And I always use this idea of a beaver coming up to a river one day and say, well, Jerry, we got a lot of sticks to lay down. And they lay down sticks and they can dam up an entire river. And so that, to me, is a very inspiring story to appreciate that. Just because you feel so gravitated towards something, you like, oh, I really want to do this thing that I know is bad for me. And that's just a feeling that can be altered. And like you say, the rewiring of the brain is an important story to appreciate, right? So. Yes.
And I was just going to say that people just need, again, I've said it several times, but just to expect the discomfort and embrace it as a part of the process, and know that it's there to tell you something super important about your wiring, and specific areas to go after, and specific conversations to change, and specific things to visualize. All of those negative feelings and all the stuff and the resistance, it's gold if you accept it that way and utilize it that way, rather than what most people do.
That's going right into the war of art, right? It's the voice of resistance is the path that you need to walk, right?
Yeah.
And that's the inherent difference in so many characters, is that when you feel the path of resistance, then you always go to resist the path. And you want to develop a character that finds the discomfort. And if you're knocking on a door, it's like, oh, this is uncomfortable. But like, this is actually the path. This is where you want to go. Mm-hmm. Ryan Holiday talks about the obstacle is the way. So let's say people are, listening to this. What's some steps you recommend that people start to explore this concept?
Well, I think you mentioned briefly at the beginning that I do have a quiz, and the reason, and what the quiz does is it helps shine a light on this autopilot behavior, because that is the first step. You have to understand what your autopilot behavior is so that you can recognize it, short circuit it, and change it. And because we're wired our whole lives, we don't see it. Very often we don't see it. Sometimes we have a sense of it, but sometimes that's just the beginning, the tip of the iceberg of stuff. And so if we can't see it as autopilot and wired, we think of it as truth and not to be changed. It's not that we don't even consider it to be changed. Like, given that this is the truth, how can I change? No, you have to throw out all of it if it's not empowering. So knowing what your autopilot responses are is the first step. So I have this quiz, it's 60 seconds. It's multiple choice, but in that time, in that amount of time, a person can identify themselves as having a particular set of traits when it comes to transformation. So I have these 4 different types, and these types each have traits. There's nothing bad about these types. And just because you have these traits, it doesn't mean you're going to sabotage yourself. But if you are sabotaging yourself, and if you do feel like things should be going faster, then knowing about these behaviors can help you, whether or not that, it's just helpful information. So that, and then once they take the quiz and they know what their type is, now I know how to help them, because I know how their brain is operating. So I know how to coach them more efficiently because I see some of the autopilot stuff. We know right where to go. It doesn't take weeks of vision boarding and all of this other stuff. It just doesn't take that much time. Everything shows up quick. We can come up with alternate conversations pretty quick. We can have them visualize different action, and we can have them taking action, sometimes the same day, and getting a result the same day.
Really cool. I did take the quiz myself. I discovered that I was an S type, the seeker. What can you tell people about the seeker if they're a seeker?
The seeker is the number one type that is tested, and it makes sense that that would be the case because, if I'm in the personal development industry, they're going to find me because they're trying to better their life. So I'm probably one of many things that they have checked out, right, to get to be on their journey. So the seeker really wants change, and they are a researcher, right? And so they research everything. They try all these programs if they resonate with them even a little bit, right? But the problem is if they start one and don't complete, or they start one, even complete it, but don't continue to do whatever they learn to rewire themselves, then they're not going to get the results. Sometimes they get to the point of discomfort in their journey, like, oh, this one's challenging me now. Oh, this one looks easier. And so they go to the next one, and it's like, of course, the first couple of days are easy. Oh, I do this, and then it gets tricky, and then they go over here. So there's lots of reasons people jump around, but the bottom line with the seeker is they don't tend to complete something long enough. Now, again, that may not be the case for you. Just because you seek and do a lot of programs doesn't mean you're sabotaging yourself. If you're successfully getting the information, successfully rewiring yourself, seeing changes in behavior, go for it. But if you're not, if nothing's happening and you've tried all these programs, then it's time to recognize what that behavior is doing.
I don't think it's far off for me. I would say, as a seeker, I feel like certain things, if you don't get the feedback, and if you don't get it could be physiotherapy. Like I'm being a trainer, like I know you have to stick to your training, or you have to stick to your physio and stuff. If I don't get the feedback, I can go out and seek someone else because I want to get the feedback that I'm on the right path. And I think a lot of people I deal with are like that. And some things stick and then some things don't because of that inherent, you got to give it time and practice. But, I guess there's also just through experiences, some things you question if they're working, right? So that gets you to the point of, is this work worth the effort? And so this is like a bit of a resistance wall that I would have to essentially be able to overcome.
97% of people who are seeking like this are going to stop if they are doing it by themselves and don't have support, because they can only see what they can see. Even if they know that they can only see what they can see, if they can't see anything outside of that, if they can't build a vision for themselves, if they can't reframe some of the meaning that comes in or the things that are brought up, then they will quit or they will go do something else and the rewiring will stop. So it's just part of, this is again, what 20 years of work, because most of my stuff early on was self-study. It was all digital, Wealth Beyond Reason program, take this course, you'll learn about the law of attraction, blah, blah, blah. But people stop if it gets uncomfortable or if it doesn't happen fast enough or whatever. But a lot of those people needed was somebody with any kind of authority or something to come in and say, no, you're fine. What you're experiencing right now is absolutely normal. Of course, you're going to have this resistance. Of course, it's going to feel this way. Let's keep going. And this, so coaching of some kind, community of some kind is key, because again, when you're on your own, that's all you've got. And all the resources and knowledge and experience, that's the entirety of your resource. And so you will only be able to see what you can see and not more than that. But if somebody else shines a light on what they can see, now you can see it too. And so it becomes more possible.
Super valuable. So valuable for people to appreciate two main things there that everyone is missing in behavior change, and that is accountability and support. Because if you're in it alone, no one's there to say, oh, you should keep going, or no one's there for you to ask, should I keep going? And it's kind of an analogy I use is you can walk a path in a forest and just kind of hope that you find your way. Or you can follow someone that has walked through the forest. And when you walk with someone, it's a lot easier to see in these dark realms that are uncomfortable. Having that accountability and the support, like you say, whether it's a community or just a coach to talk to, is such a day and night difference.
Yeah.
You know, I'll just give a simple story of, I was prepping for a bodybuilding show a few years ago. And my old boss was my coach in some regards. He would just guide me, and he was kind of mentoring me through the process. And some days, all he said was, yeah, it sucks. That was it. It's like, yeah, no, it's tough. Take some naps. And then two years later, I go to do one on my own. I try to do my own system and all this stuff. And the only person I could really talk to was my girlfriend, who had no, training or anything. She was just there to listen to me rant. And I made so many mistakes. I was so misguided, and I felt so unsure. And I just knew, it's like, I'm never doing that again. I don't even care if I just pay someone to tell me, yeah, keep going. But having that accountability, and the word support is, I think, really underlooked, that you need someone to tell you, yes, keep going. You need someone to guide you on this. And not to mention, just to go back to that analogy, they've walked through the forest, man. Through the forest with some light is an extremely valuable thing. So with your current program, is that what you provide people? Is you provide a community and a program?
Yes. Yeah. And so the program's called Balanced Living Challenge, so I'll call it the challenge. So with the challenge, my goal was to take 20 years of what I know actually moves people into that action and get results and put it in there. Right. So daily touch points. So they get a little nugget every day, a little distinction, like 3 minutes, nothing. They don't have to watch a 20-minute thing and do a workbook or any of that. It's just to keep them. Oh, yeah. Didn't think about that. So they get into the habit of rethinking things. So they have that. And then they do, visualization exercises like we discussed at the beginning and the end of each day to rehearse and re-rehearse and re-rehearse who they are. There's some journaling and things like that, but then there's also the community and invaluable support, obviously, because people are coming into the program at different times. And so people who came in, 45 days ago have a lot of help to provide the new people and all of that. Plus weekly coaching I get with people every week so that they're hearing from whatever their voice of authority or whatever it is, but just somebody who can help keep them on task every single week. And like I said, this has been the most, in terms of people changing fundamentally, like how they behave out in the world. It's the fastest thing I've ever done. I mean, I've seen these results. And what's nice also about it is it's very realistic. Everybody just is, they're making audacious goals, obviously, because that's what's inspiring them and moving them through, but they are accepting the pace through at which the journey is going. And they're grateful for all the distinctions and all of those things. And that's so much different than how it was before, when where's the magic, that kind of stuff. So yeah, we try to provide, and there's a point system, which it seems a little silly at first, but we've gamified it. And the reason we do that is because your brain loves that stuff. It loves checking off a box and getting a point for something that they can earn. So they do a certain amount of stuff, then they unlock another program, that kind of stuff. Unlocks. It's the whole reason games work and people scroll. It's dopamine hits. And it should feel good to make progress. So those little things are all just keep people in the game. And that's the most important thing. We got to keep them in the game long enough where it becomes a habit for them. They don't have to be reminded to do it. They don't have to think of it as a chore to do this short little meditation, because they see the benefits of it. It shows up in their everyday life. So it becomes a non-negotiable part of the day.
I like that mindset around the points. I think it's super valuable. Like, all these biofeedback tools are really doing that. Why, the watches and the step counters, and, some people don't believe it. And I really do, because if you don't know what you're doing, how do you know you're making progress or keeping up on progress? Some people have an unfortunate relationship with calories. I don't mind them because it keeps me on point. And I even like to address points. Like, the idea you have a point system for something that inherently wouldn't normally have it is super valuable. I used willpower points for people when they needed to identify that they were making good decisions not eating something, like point not doing something. And that's a will, right?
Yes.
It's no different than resistance training. You're resisting, hey, I want to eat this cookie, but I don't. So out of 5, how much would you rate that? Well, that's a 5 out of 5 from me. Okay, you got 5 points there. And then
that's awesome.
And it's not that people would do it all the time. I say practice it to know that every time you're doing it, it's worth something, rather than just completely saying I didn't do it and not realizing that you're making progress. So I think
Sorry to interrupt. But of course, the goal is to have the reward be its own reward, the result be its own reward eventually, but giving them those little wins so they associate with, like, this action feels good because whatever. Then after a while, the reward, that kind of thing, the points don't matter that much. But absolutely. It got them going.
Exactly. And that's the whole idea. Start to quantify or like qualify, knowing that you're on the right path so that you feel like good about it. And then eventually it's like, now it's a normal feedback loop of not doing something's a good thing. Right. So I totally support that. Think that's really cool. And so I would love to hear some really cool stories that you have. Like, how many members do you have? What's some really good transformations that you've seen?
The Boundless Living Challenge has been around in various forms since 2008. There have been thousands and thousands, like I don't even know. But now it's much more with trying to come up with the word. It's more intimate because of how we've got it set up. But it's a wonderful thing because it can scale, it can be whatever. But the stories, like I said, let's talk about what results are, because this is so important to me as someone who has, again, law of attraction. People come in, they have these, I want $1 million, I want the house, I want all this stuff. And, when you hear about those manifestations and everybody, that's the thing. But for me, way more important than the manifesting a thing or an event or a person or any of that is, am I growing to be the person I need to become? And that's what I was alluding to before, is watching people over the course of time truly evolve, truly not think how they used to, making decisions from this new empowered state, like they're not the same person anymore. And that's the biggest, and that happens with virtually anybody who sticks with it for 45 days or more. They're going to make a change if they're doing the work. They can't not, because they're out there, they're being different, so they're going to get different results. So these are things like I get people who get inspired entrepreneurially, or maybe they had an entrepreneurial seed, or they tried something before and now they want to play a bigger game, and they're just taking all these actions and they're making I have one guy who's got this Facebook group with just tons, like hundreds of thousands of people, that he just really wasn't monetizing it well. He has got this amazing opportunity. And so I coached him eventually, just like playing with getting advertisers. And then I was asking, how much are you charging? And he was telling me, I'm like, you realize you could go 10x that, right? And he was like, well, I don't know if I could, but then the next week he came back, he said, well, I had done this, I did this, I did this. And now I feel comfortable asking for this, which was 3 times what I said. So that's the kind of stuff that inspires me, because I know that these people are on a trajectory to wherever it is they want to go. I've seen people give up lifelong stories and make huge life transitions, leaving, like one of the types is people pleaser, right? And the people pleaser, it tends to squelch their own dreams for the comfort of others. And if the people that you're trying to please are like your parents or close family, making that move, doing it anyway, is unbelievably hard for some of these people. If you're not in that situation, maybe you don't feel it. So when I have a person who might suffer for weeks or months or whatever, maybe sometimes years, with wanting to, in this case I'm thinking about, move out of state to follow their dream. But the parents were constantly, you can't, who are you to do that whole thing. And for years she didn't do it. And then finally, she was in, we coach. And then she freaking sold all her stuff and did it. And now she's out there living her dream, doing exactly what she wanted to do. And I know there were times when she thought it was impossible. I know she thought she'd never do it. She'd never do it. But it is entirely possible when you create the vision enough and get it cultivated enough, have the right kind of feedback so that you keep growing it, keep seeing and then that whatever it takes to take that first bold step. I mean, she could have gone home at any time, but she didn't. Right? She went through the whole thing, not knowing a lot. I mean, so many things. Her journey involved not knowing where she was going to be from day to day, sometimes, or week to week. Like, where am I going to live? It was this journeying thing. It was like, even I was like going, well, I really hope this works for her. And it did. So it's just little miracles like that give huge quality that's lasting, not a big, like, oh, look, I won the lottery. Okay, great. I hope you're that person who can maintain that, because you're in for a world of hurt if you're not. But to be able to slowly but surely become methodically the person you want to become, that's what inspires me the most.
Beautiful statement. It's about basically who you're becoming. And I love that you keep reiterating this, because it's really not enough in messaging when people are selling. They're selling results, not process. And my old boxing coach came on here and had one of the most golden statements I'd ever heard. And he said, the process is the result. And it was just so potent to me, because, as a fitness professional, I'm selling, physiques and all that stuff. It's like, but that's just the result of a good process, right? So if you're not identifying with all these behaviors and all these things, then it's not going to feel like you, right? And so you keep coming back to this. It's about what you need to do as a way of thinking and becoming that behavior. Is that kind of fair?
Yeah. A lot of times people will be like, I don't know. How do I know, how to behave? I've never been that before. And then I say, look, there is something in you that is calling you to be that. There must be some subconscious idea that you have of what it's going to feel like to be that, or you would not have that desire. That reaction of, I don't know how to, that's a knee-jerk reaction. And it just is a delay. It's a delay tactic of your wiring. Well, you don't know how to be that. You get to make it up. They didn't know how to do it either until they just started doing it. You can look at people and see their behaviors and at least start to emulate those things. There are things that are obvious. And then there are some mindset things you might observe over the course of time, but you can't start this journey by saying, I don't know how, because that's a conversation. That is a wiring conversation that will stop you. You will rationalize not doing it because you don't know how it's supposed to feel. But I promise you wouldn't have the desire at all if you didn't have some inkling of how it would feel.
Very, very well said, because I think people are afraid to dream. And I think that's a very challenging thing. When I talk to people and I ask them, like, where you want to be, where's your goal mindset, what's your dream state? Super, like, that alone is such a point of resistance for people. People are afraid to believe in themselves. And I feel like, it's a consequence of life and environment and having diminishing dreams. But then if you had kind of stated it, it's like, if it's in you, it's in you for a reason. And I always tell people, dreams aren't where you live your life, but you figure out a way to live. And so if you're willing to dream that, if you're willing to take that time and it, you're basically fostering it. And then you got to look at the behaviors around that lifestyle. First time I ever did a similar practice to this, and I haven't done your system yet, and I look forward to trying it out, it was so tangible when I made it feel real. When I had just one day where I just like really felt like I was breathing in that body and that mindset, it just hasn't left me since. And it was like giving myself the permission to do it was huge. So how do you help people with that? How do you give people help with permission to dream?
Oh, well, there's, again, if I just have I love to still live in logic. So, I like to deconstruct a lot of things, but if you understand that your brain can change, like you mentioned, people are afraid to dream big. Well, that's because they don't believe they can have the dream. right? That's just that simple. I don't know how I would do that. That's not possible for me. So let's short circuit that. Is anyone living your dream? Yes. Who? That person. What did they have to do it? Well, they had to do this and this and this and this and this and this. Could you do those things, or could you learn to do those things? Is it possible for you to learn to do those things? The answer is yes. Of course it is. Now they're going to have a lot of other things, but do you know that it took them a lot of time to get there? Yes. Are you willing to take the time to get? It's just logic. Like, you can dream as big as you want if you're willing to do what it takes to get there. So really, like, and the bigger and bolder, the more excited you're going to be. And the more excitement you have, you'll go out there more, you'll tell more people, you'll get more resources. It's just, it feeds on itself.
I really, really appreciate that. Yeah, it's trying to basically deduce this idea is like, know that it's a physical possibility. And then from there, you have to deduce things. And I like how you can create a little bit of logic attachment to it. Very valuable for people, because that's where people become limited, is that they think, oh, well, this is an impossible thing for me. But let's talk about if it's possible for humans and if you could actually take those steps.
Exactly. And you know what? Fitness, this is such a great paradigm. I mean, because, just think of training your brain like you train your body. Of course, it takes time. It takes repetitions. Sometimes you get sore. You got to feed it the right things, all of those things. Getting into the fitness habit, it takes a commitment. You got to have that vision. You know why you're doing it. If you're really going to succeed and get results, you have that drive. It is the same thing. If you can have that sort of ambition, that goal, that drive, if you've done it with your body, you can do it with your mind.
That's exactly the terminology I use all the time. I tell people reps of will. Like, you have to recognize that it's not crazy for you to believe that you did so many push-ups this week and in a month you can do more. And people really grasp that easily. Like, yes. We're aware that that's what training is. Your mind has to be the same way, because guess what? The first thing that happens within the first 8 weeks of a program, and people don't know this, you physically don't get stronger. Your motor neurons, brain to muscle, your brain wires better to move better. That's all that happens. So you're now actually entirely just doing something neurological. It's not even really like a muscle thing as much as you see it as that. So it's a really important story for people. And I think this is why I love having you on, because the getting rid of self-limiting beliefs, creating a new story in your own narrative is so valuable, because that makes people feel a lot less limited, right? It's like, what do you want your story to be? Yeah. Because so many people are confined.
And just know that when you start telling yourself a new story, you're going to feel like an idiot. I mean, the odds are good that every part of your brain is going to go, what are you doing? That's not who you are. And you just got to take that ride. And just know, of course, that's going to happen, because you've got no experience. There's nothing wired in there to say that you can do it, except the will, that deep, deep thing that is driving the whole thing. But between that's in you and here, there's all this crap, right? So, but you can do it. It's just, again, the repetition. You just do the things. You just do the things.
Right. And I love this idea of, if you don't give yourself the dream, you're not even going to give your mind a chance to make a roadmap. And that was what really led into my, acceptance of this possibility. So when I first started to, believe or see this dream, it's like, that makes so much sense. It makes so much sense that when the law of attraction or any of these things work, it's because someone tried to intentfully get there. People don't get to be champions in professional leagues or become movie stars by accident. Like none of that happens by accident. It happens by a dream. And so you have to give your mind an opportunity to create a roadmap in order to become that person. So I think it's a really good story. I would love to know from your perspective, because you've been on quite a journey yourself. And as this is a Strong Ambition podcast, you've had great ambition to help people. Is there anything new or current? I know you got your program. Is there anything new or current that is your most recent ambition?
Oh, yeah. And it has nothing to do necessarily with any of this work. And I have a lot of things. I play the ukulele obsessively, and I do a lot of different things. But my real interest these days is synthetic media, digital machine learning, and that kind of stuff. I have a whole Instagram channel that is just me with digitally created faces, doing voices and characters, all that broadcaster part of me. Yes. So yes, I want to find my place in that. We're doing a lot of stuff with the metaverse and VR and things like that. So I have a lot of interest in that whole world too. And it goes along with creating your reality and controlling your environment and all of those things, virtual reality and the metaverse and all of those fun creation tools. So finding my place in that, being a voice for that is an ambition of mine, even though it has nothing to do with the work I'm doing here.
I just love that it always comes back to you being able to do what you always set out to do. And I think that's the story I hope people really hone in on is like, you don't know how you're going to end up doing what you feel is a calling to you. Similar to myself, like when I was younger, I kind of wanted to be an actor. Now I'm on social media all the time, making funny memes and videos and stuff. It's like, hey, you know what? It brings out this inner actor in me. And I love that. And in some way I'm a performer and now I'm always speaking in some way. And I think that's the real cool part of the story. So why don't you tell people more where they can find you and about your program again?
So taking the quiz is a great front door to me because it will lead you into learning about the program. So if they go to tptquiz.com, and that's for Transformation Personality Type Quiz.com, then they can take the quiz and they'll learn about the challenge. Or they can go to meetbobdoyle.com, which is just kind of the hub for all things Bob. It'll take you to all of my socials. You'll learn about coaching and speaking and training and all those other things.
Terrific. Well, thanks so much, Bob. I appreciate you spending your time today.
My pleasure.
Thanks again to Bob Doyle for this. I really appreciated that whole conversation. I think his story is really cool where he had, his own reflection on, how he grew up and how he couldn't control a lot. I think that's a super valuable point. We didn't spend a lot of time on it, but it is super valuable because that's a part of, for myself, what helped me evolve was, being in circumstances where I couldn't control and accepting that, but then realizing what I could. And for him to evolve into appreciating all this stuff and how he ended up, he wanted to be in some way, the commentator and in this voiceover, and now he's doing it. And he's changing lives in the process as well is an amazing part. So I think it's really cool too, because there is work to do with your mind. And it doesn't matter how good a program is. I have my strength programs and nutrition programs. The people who have the willingness to do the work get the results. I wish I could help people more with their subconscious mind. I'm still getting to know mine. I'm still trying to appreciate what mine is telling me. But I do think that there is some extremely valuable knowledge here. I think when you are asking yourself, can I do something or can't I? Your subconscious mind is going to answer that for you first. And then you might deliberate a little bit. But your subconscious mind could believe in it. You could actually communicate with something that's beneath the surface. That gut feeling, the feeling in the heart, the feeling beyond the feeling. It's a part of who you are. It is who you are. And it's just the part that we're not aware of or we just don't know how to communicate with. And I really like that he talks about rewiring. Remember the example, if you really paid attention to what I was mentioning, with you rewire your body to be stronger first. You don't put on muscle mass off the bat. The first thing you do is wire things so things work synergistically better in your muscles. Your mind's going to work the same way. So you got to put in reps. So I really encourage you to check out his website and check out that test. I was a seeker, as I had mentioned. Find out what you are and find out both the pros and cons to whatever that personality type is. And I encourage you to, maybe be curious about his program. Because I think the worst thing that we can have is just completely be without power in our own mind, is to be our own self-limiting beliefs and say that's it. And if you completely become defined by what your current way of thinking is, that's the saddest story to me, because you're never defined. You're never done being defined. Your life is always evolving, and it's either diminishing or it's progressing. And I've talked about this before on my show, where you have I have two schools of thoughts for people, that there are those who are hard deterministic and soft deterministic. And determinism is just a school of thought through philosophy that things are going to be the way they are. It's a cascade of reactions. But I believe that people within themselves become hard and set in their ways and they just think that they are their own circumstances. But then they don't look for where they can change their circumstances. I am a soft deterministic person where I believe I can change my circumstances. I can change who I am. And I hope that's something that you can reflect on. And maybe Bob can give you that guidance. And if he doesn't, I just hope you do. I hope you find a way to tell yourself a better story. And so remember to check out Bob's website. Remember to check out my website, rqtrainingnutrition.com. Check out my Instagram and my YouTube if you want. But, you know, this whole story, the whole thing about what I was talking about with Bob really lends itself well to the whole philosophy here that I hope you remember if you don't know. It isn't about the pursuit of happiness. It's about the happiness within the pursuit. Catch you next time.